Now, I want every Christian that watches this video, I'm going to ask you some things and be very honest. Comment down in the comment section below. Is Satan more powerful than you? Is Satan more powerful than you? You alone. Some of us, most of us are going to say yes. Satan is more powerful than you. Is Satan more powerful than God? A lot of us are going to say no. I hope all of us say no. Satan is not more powerful than God. Is God more powerful than Satan? I hope everybody says yes. God is more powerful than Satan. Is God more powerful than you? I hope you all said yes. God is more powerful than you. Now, let me ask, can Satan entice you to sin? Yes. Satan can entice you to sin. Can you sin without being enticed by Satan? Just by you yourself? Can you just sin without being enticed by Satan? Yes. Now let me ask you guys this, and think about this. Think about this. Can God now keep you from sinning? Can God keep you from sinning? What's up, everybody? Welcome to class. This is where we investigate, prove, and observe, and we test every doctrine with the truth of God's word. My name is Tila. You guys can follow me on all social media. Links are in the description box. By the way, shout out to everybody who's been supporting this ministry. If you guys want to support, you guys can do so by praying for this ministry, sharing our content, and subscribing to our YouTube channel, and by donating at schoolforprophets.tv. Link is in the description box. The donations do help. It does help us keep this ministry afloat, and it helps us pay the bills around here. So without further ado, let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you again, Father, for another opportunity to study this very, very important subject. We ask, Father, now that you please help us to understand this clearly. Help us clearly, Father, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so is keeping the commandments of God works-based? Is it works-based? Keeping the commandments of God, is that works-based? If it is works-based, I want you guys to answer this real quick. We're going to go through the 10 commandments, okay? We're going to go through the 10 commandments, and you tell me if any of the 10 commandments has anything to do with works, with what you do. Tell me, okay? Tell me. Number 1, no other gods. Don't have any other gods. Is that works-based? No. Don't have any other gods. That's not works-based. You don't have to work to do anything in order for that to be kept. Don't bow down to idols. That is also not works-based. He's asking you not to bow down to idols. Don't do this. Don't use his name in vain. Is that works-based? No. Keep the Sabbath holy. Sabbath means rest. So automatically that is not works-based. Honor your father and mother. That's the only thing that is a positive. But even that is light. It just means to honor your father and your mother. Don't kill, not works-based. Don't commit adultery, not works-based. Don't steal, don't lie, don't covet, not works-based. None of the 10 commandments are works-based. So if you keep the 10 commandments, then is that a works-based salvation? If you are keeping the 10 commandments of God, a list of don't do's, is that a works-based salvation? It's not. It's not a works-based salvation. What about then? What does Paul mean then by when he said that we are not justified by the works of the law? What does he mean by that? Let's go to Romans. Let's go to Romans 3 real quick. Romans 3, starting from verse 23, it says, "For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God hath set forth to be a propitiation through faith in his blood, to declare his righteousness for the remission of sins that are past through the forbearance of God. To declare, I say, at this time his righteousness, that he might be just and the justifier of him which believeth in Jesus. Where is boasting then? It is excluded by what law? Of works? Nay, but by the law of faith. Not by the works of the law of faith. Not by works. Not by works. Galatians 3, starting from verse 10. For as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, cursed is every one that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law to do them. The book of the law is, if you go to Deuteronomy 31, those are the laws that are against us. I'm not talking about the 10 commandments. Okay? The book of the law. But that no man is justified by the law in the sight of God, it is evident, for the just shall live by faith. The just shall live by faith. Romans 5, verse 8, starting from verse 8. What have we learned so far? That we are not justified by the works of the law. Wait a minute. What works of the law? We just read the 10 commandments. None of it is works. None of it is works. It's a list of don't do's. None of it is works. So what is it talking about by the works of the law? That we are not justified by the works of the law. If the 10 commandments is not a list of works, what is it talking about then? By being justified by the works of the law, or not being justified by the works of the law. Romans 5, starting from verse 8, it says, but God commendeth his love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Much more than, being now justified by his what? By his blood. So we are not justified by the works of the law. We are justified by the blood of Jesus Christ. We're justified by the blood of Jesus Christ, not by the works of the law. So we're justified by the blood of Jesus Christ, not by the works of the law. Okay, remember this. Watch this. Watch this. Paul says in Galatians 2, starting from verse 14. But when I saw, that this is talking about when he saw Peter. Peter was trying to circumcise Gentiles. Okay? And by the way, those who are circumcised are required to kill lambs, to keep the feasts, to kill lambs, to sacrifice. Those who are circumcised. Okay? Now watch what he says. He's talking about Peter here. Watch what he says. Galatians 2, starting from verse 14. He says, but when I saw that they walk not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, I said unto Peter before them all, if thou being a Jew livest after the manner of Gentiles, and not as do the Jews, why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as the Jews? What does he mean by this? By living as the Jews. What was peculiar about the Jews? What was peculiar about the Jews? How did the Jews live? Watch this. Verse 15 and 16. Look at this. He goes on to say, we who are Jews by nature and not sinners of the Gentiles, knowing that a man is not what? Is not justified by the works of the law, but by the faith of Jesus Christ. Even we have believed in Jesus, that we might be justified by the faith of Christ, and not by the works of the law. For by the works of the law shall no flesh be justified. So again, we have this distinction between the works of the law and the blood of Christ or Jesus Christ. So we are justified by Jesus Christ. We are justified by the blood of Jesus Christ, not by the works of the law. Again, what is this works of the law? It's not the Ten Commandments. Again, when we listed the Ten Commandments, it has nothing to do with works. What is this works of the law? Again, we are justified by the blood of Jesus Christ, not by the works of the law. Which law? Hebrews 9, starting from verse 11. But Christ being come and high priest of good things to come by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. By the way, the holy place, if you go back then, okay, if you look at the what happened back then, the Jews would sacrifice lambs. They would take the blood and put it on the altar of sacrifice. Not everyone can do that, right? And so, because there's millions of Jews in the camp when the sacrificial law was in place. Okay, what happened was, because the millions of Jews can't go enter into the courtyard all in one day, the priest had to sacrifice for everyone at 9 a.m. and at 3 p.m. The priest, the common priest, has to sacrifice for everyone. Has to sacrifice one lamb for everyone. And then he took that lamb, he took the blood of the lamb into the holy place and put it on the altar of incense. Okay? That blood. Watch now. Again, Hebrews 9, starting from verse 11. But Christ being come and high priest of good things to come by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, he entered in once in the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of an heifer, sprinkling the unclean, sanctifieth to the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God? Talking about the sacrificial law. Jesus Christ became that ultimate sacrifice, that his blood, it's not the blood of bulls and goats that would save us. It was Jesus' blood. Watch. Hebrews 10, starting from verse 1. Same author. For the law having a shadow of good things to come. The law, which law? Which law? For the law of having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never with those sacrifices. So this is not talking about the Ten Commandments. This is talking about the sacrificial law. For the law, sacrificial law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never with those sacrifices, which they offered year by year continually, make the comers thereunto perfect. He's saying that those sacrifices, back then in the old covenant, those sacrifices can never make someone perfect. Now watch. For then would they not have ceased to be offered, because that the worshippers once purged should have had no more conscience of sins. But in those sacrifices, there is a remembrance again made of sins every year. That's the Day of Atonement. Every year, their sins are remembered. Every year. That's the Day of Atonement. Look what it says now. Verse 4. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sins. Do you guys get what this is talking about now? Is this talking about the Ten Commandments? No, it's talking about the sacrificial law. What did they have to do? Every day, daily, what did they have to do? In order for them to get right with God again, when they broke the Ten Commandments, when they sinned and broke the Ten Commandments, what did they have to do daily? Sacrifice a lamb or a bull or a goat. That's what they had to do. Matthew 26, verse 27. This is talking about when Jesus Christ had that last dinner with his disciples. Look what he says. And he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. So, contrasting the blood of bulls and goats, now here comes Jesus offering his own blood for the remission of sins. Before Jesus came, what did they have to do? Sacrifice bulls and goats and lambs in order for them to be saved, for the remission of sins. Hebrews says that it is not by the blood of bulls and goats that we are saved. We are not justified by the blood of bulls and goats. We are justified by who? By Jesus Christ. By his shedding of his blood. That's how we are justified. That's how we are justified. Again, that is talking about the sacrificial law. We're not justified by keeping the sacrificial law. So this is not talking about the 10 commandments here. It's talking about the sacrificial law. We're not justified by keeping the sacrificial law, by doing these works, by slitting a lamb's throat. That's not what we are justified by. Because Jesus Christ came to be that ultimate sacrifice for us. So those people back then, when they were sacrificing those lambs, spilling and shedding the blood of bulls and goats, that was pointing to what Jesus Christ was going to do on the cross, spilling his own blood. Okay? Now, again, we are not justified by the works of those law. Not talking about the 10 commandments. We are not justified by works. We are not saved by the works of those law. By slitting a lamb's throat. We're not justified by that. We are justified by the blood of Jesus Christ. That's what we are justified by. Watch this now. Deuteronomy 4, starting from verse 13. And he declared unto you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments. And he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. And the Lord commanded me, talking, about Moses. He's the one writing this. And the Lord commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that ye might do them in the land whither ye go over to possess it. 2 laws. God's law, 10 commandments, Moses' law. If this is not clear, let's go to 2 Kings 21, verse 8. Neither will I make the feet of Israel, this is God talking, move anymore out of the land which I gave their fathers, only if they observe to do according to all that I have commanded them, and according to all the law that my servant Moses commanded them. Clear. 2 laws. God's commandments, Moses' commandments. If that's not clear enough, Daniel 9 and verse 11 says this. Now this was Daniel's prayer. He was praying to God. Verse 11 says this, yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, God's law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God. 2 laws. They transgress your law, God. Now the curse that is written in the law of Moses is poured upon us. 2 laws. God's laws, Moses' laws. What is God's law? He wrote it on the 2 tables of stone. The 10 commandments written with his own finger, put inside of the ark. Moses' law, according to Deuteronomy 31, was written by Moses in the book of the law, put on the side of the ark, not inside the ark. What's contained in the book of the law? Sacrificial law, feast days, all these things that they had to do in order to get right with God when they break the 10 commandments. When they break the 10 commandments, the book of the law has to apply. They have to sacrifice things in order for them to get right with God again. Guys, we are not justified by the works of the law. That works of the law is the slitting and cutting and spilling the blood of bulls and goats and lambs. That is the work. That's the work. We no longer have to do that. Now, when we sin, we no longer have to slit a lamb's throat. We now have to have faith that Jesus Christ is that ultimate sacrifice. We are saved by grace through faith. We are no longer saved by the works of the law. By the way, we were never saved by those works anyway, because those works pointed to who? Jesus Christ. Acts 13. Look at what Paul says. Paul says, Acts 13, starting from verse 26, men and brethren, children of the stock of Abraham. So he's talking to the Jews here. And whoever among you feareth God, to you is the word of this salvation sent. For they that dwell at Jerusalem, and their rulers, because they knew him not, nor yet the voices of the prophets which are read every Sabbath day, they have fulfilled them in condemning him. Watch, skip on over to verse 36. Paul is talking about David, and Paul is talking about the resurrection of Christ. He says it wasn't David that was resurrected. It was Christ that was resurrected. But David wrote about the resurrection of Christ. Watch what he says. Verse 36, for David, after he had served his own generation by the will of God, fell on sleep. That means he fell asleep. That means he died, and was laid unto his fathers, and saw corruption. That means he was not resurrected. Okay? He did not resurrect. But he whom God raised again, that's talking about Jesus Christ, saw no corruption. Clearly that's Jesus Christ. Be it known unto you, therefore, men and brethren, that through this man is preached unto you the forgiveness of sins, and by him all that believe are justified. What is Paul saying? Paul is saying you are not justified by the works of the law, by slitting a lamb's throat. No, you are justified by him, Jesus Christ. Is he going against the customs of the Jews? He's telling the Jews, hey, look, you no longer have to keep the feast days. You no longer have to slit a lamb's throat. You no longer have to do those things in order for you to be saved. In order for you to be saved now, you need to have faith in Jesus Christ. You are justified by his blood shedding on that cross. That's what Paul is saying. Acts 21, verse 21. This is talking about when Paul went to Jerusalem. People were scared for him, because the Jews wanted to stone him, wanted to kill him. Look what it says. And they are informed of thee, that thou teachest all the Jews, talking to Paul, which are among the Gentiles, to forsake Moses. When they say to forsake Moses, they're talking about the law of Moses, the teachings of Moses, the customs that Moses taught the people. Look what it says. So they're saying, hey, look, the Jews know that you are teaching the Jews and the Gentiles to forsake Moses, to stop killing lambs in order to be saved. Saying that they ought not to circumcise their children, neither to walk after the customs. Talking about sacrificial laws, the book of the law that Moses wrote. Paul, so they wanted to kill Paul for telling people, for preaching this what they call is blasphemy, that you no longer have to sacrifice lambs in order to be saved. So what were the Jews relying on? Were they relying on the shed blood of Jesus Christ? Or were they relying on their own works when they would shed the blood of bulls and goats? What were they relying on? Jesus Christ's blood, or the blood that they themselves spill, the blood of bulls and goats? Their own works. Paul was telling them to stop relying on your works. Paul was telling them, stop relying on your own works. You are not justified by the works of the law, by those sacrificial laws. Again, not talking about the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments has no works in it. It's a bunch of don't do's. This is talking about the sacrificial law, where they had to slit a lamb's throat. That is work. That's work in order to be saved. In the Jewish mind, in the Hebrew mind, you had to slit a lamb's throat in order to be justified. Paul says, you don't have to do that work in order to be justified. You are not justified by the works of the law. It's not talking about the 10 commandments here. Not talking about the 10 commandments. We now have to have faith in Jesus Christ. He was the fulfillment of those sacrifices. The works that they were doing means nothing because those works pointed to Jesus Christ's work. The shedding of his own blood. Watch. Matthew 1 verse 21. Talking about the Mary here. And she shall bring forth a son. Who's that son? Jesus Christ. And thou shalt call his name Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins. What is sin? Sin is the transgression of the law, the 10 commandments. Back then, before Jesus Christ came, in order for them to be right with God again, they had to keep the sacrificial law and do the works of the law because that pointed to Jesus Christ. Now that Jesus Christ was here and shed his blood for us, we now have to have faith in Jesus Christ, finished work on the cross. We no longer have to keep the works of the law in order to be justified. So we are saved from sin. Are we? Are we saved from sin? It says that Jesus came to save his people from their sins. Are we saved from sin? If we are saved from sin, why then are we still sinning? Why then are we still sinning? Does God want you to sin? I'm talking to every Christian YouTuber here that preach the fact that teach that keeping the commandments of God is a works-based salvation. Talking to you, Young Don, talking to Ruslan, talking to Alan Parr, talking to Wretched Radio, whatever his name is, Todd. They teach that keeping God's commandments it's a works-based salvation. Let me ask. Breaking the 10 commandments is a sin, is it not? If Jesus Christ saved us from our sins, why are we still sinning? Why? Does God want us to sin? Does God want us to sin? God does not want us to sin. Is God more powerful than Satan? Yes. Is God more powerful than you? Yes. Then how come you are still sinning? How come? Because you have no faith that God is powerful. You don't believe that. The reason why you're still sinning, me too, is because you have no faith that God can keep you from sinning, that God can save you from your sins. Again, if God is more powerful than Satan, and if God is more powerful than you, why then do you keep saying that we can never overcome sin? You are then relying on self, not on God. You're looking too much to self. I can never do this. If you look too much to yourself, of course, you can never do that. You can never overcome sin on your own by yourself. You can never do that. But if you look to God, Jude says, Jude 24, God is able to keep you from falling. That means sinning. God is able to keep you from sinning. If you then continue to believe that you can never overcome sin, you either have no faith in God or your God is weak. God is not weak. The true God of the Bible can give you victory over sin. Stop relying on yourself. Rely on the one that can give you victory over sin. That's faith. Praise God always. Bye.
We cannot afford to let the critical goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius slip out of our reach.
And those impacts are getting worse and could potentially be irreversible.
The debate over pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib is quite a debate. You know, some people think they're pre-trib. They believe Jesus is coming before the tribulation, or he's coming in the middle of the tribulation, or he's coming at the end of the tribulation.
We don't know for sure when Jesus will return, but God does give us several signs, several markers that we know that the end will be near. Many of those are seen in Matthew 24. We have things like wars, rumors of wars, pestilences, and earthquakes, and all these events.
You know, there are a lot of dear Christians that are mixed up regarding the events, the chronology of the coming of the Lord. All Christians agree there's going to be a tribulation. You can't escape where Jesus says in Matthew 24, there's a time of trouble such as there never has been coming. Jesus is actually quoting Daniel chapter 12, where Daniel says in chapter 12, at that time Michael will stand up, the great prince that stands for the children of thy people, and there will be a time of trouble such as there never has been, even unto that same time. So they all agree there is this great tribulation that you read about.
As you look at all the passages regarding the second coming, you realize these are things that you're going to be able to see. Every eye shall see him. The elements are melting with fervent heat. I don't know if you've ever been in a sauna. It gets past 120, 130, you begin to feel it. And I don't know exactly what temperature elements begin to burn up, but I'm sure it's going to be quite hot. And so that's not something that you could sort of ignore.
The Bible is clear that we are going to hear Jesus come back with a great sound of a trumpet. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, beginning in verse 16, the Bible actually says, "For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout." He's coming back shouting, "with the voice of the archangel and with the trumpet of God." So again, you don't see that in many of the ideology and the teachings of today in modern Christianity. Most of them teach it's a secret silent event. But the Bible says when Jesus Christ comes back, he's going to be shouting in all of his power and glory. He's going to be excited to see his bride, whom he has been separated from for so long.